Welcome to Hardly, where books turn into 3 stories, refreshing your knowledge in minutes. Today, we study together Gawdat's That Little Voice in Your Head, in which we probe into how our thoughts, left unchecked, can shape our reality and ultimately dictate our happiness or suffering. Gawdat is the Chief Business Officer of Google. X. Don't go away. Hardly, the editor, will be right back with the story. Let me take you through 3 stories that illustrate just how powerful our thoughts can be, often without us even realizing it. The first story is about a man who was once a highly successful executive, always busy, always on the move. He prided himself on his work ethic, believing that his tireless efforts were necessary for providing for his family. But as his career advanced, he found himself spending less and less time with his loved ones, always assuming they understood that he was doing it all for them. The turning point came when his young daughter asked him why he was never around, even though they had everything they could ever want. This simple question shattered his belief that his work was justified by the material comfort it provided. He realized that he had been running on a thought loop that told him success meant sacrificing personal time. It was a harsh wake-up call. He had been so caught up in his thoughts about work and success that he had neglected the true source of happiness, his family. The second story involves a woman who had always been plagued by self-doubt. Growing up, she constantly compared herself to others, feeling that she was never good enough. These thoughts haunted her throughout her life, leading her to miss out on opportunities because she was too afraid of failing. One day, she came across an old diary from her teenage years. As she read through the pages, she realized that the same negative thoughts she had as a teenager were still dictating her life. The diary entries were filled with self-criticism and anxiety about the future, mirroring the same thoughts she had as an adult. This discovery was a turning point. She understood that her unhappiness stemmed from a pattern of thoughts that had been with her for decades, shaping her reality and limiting her potential. The third story is about a young man who had a deep fear of public speaking. Every time he had to speak in front of an audience, his mind would race with thoughts of failure and humiliation. These thoughts became so overwhelming that they paralyzed him, preventing him from even attempting to speak in public. One day, after yet another missed opportunity due to his fear, he decided to confront these thoughts head-on. He started by speaking in front of a mirror, then gradually moved to speaking in front of small groups. As he continued, he noticed something remarkable. The thoughts of failure that once dominated his mind began to lose their power. With each small victory, his confidence grew, and the fear that once controlled him diminished. He realized that his fear had been nothing more than a collection of thoughts that he had given too much power to. These stories are not just about individuals who faced their fears or overcame obstacles. They are about the underlying truth that our thoughts, left unchecked, can shape our reality in profound ways. The man who neglected his family, the woman who doubted herself, and the young man who feared public speaking all had something in common. They allowed their thoughts to dictate their actions and consequently their happiness. In the book, there is a powerful quote that captures this idea perfectly. It's the thought that makes us unhappy. No event, I dare say, in your entire life ever had the power to make you unhappy unless you granted it that power by turning it into a thought and running it through your head over and over to make yourself miserable. This quote highlights the core argument that our thoughts are the true source of our suffering. It's not the external events that cause us pain, but our interpretation of those events through the lens of our thoughts. The stories above illustrate that our thoughts are not always based on reality. They are often colored by past experiences, fears, and insecurities. When we allow these thoughts to run unchecked, they create a distorted view of the world, leading us to make decisions that are not in our best interest. The man who worked tirelessly did so because he believed that was the only way to show love. The woman who doubted herself missed out on countless opportunities because she believed she wasn't good enough. The young man who feared public speaking avoided it because he believed he would fail. But in each case, these beliefs were just thoughts that could be challenged and changed. The lesson here is that we must become aware of our thoughts and the power they hold over us. We need to recognize that thoughts are not facts. They are simply mental constructs that can be altered. By changing our thoughts, we can change our reality. We can choose to focus on thoughts that empower us rather than those that hold us back. As the editor of Hardly, by learning to recognize and challenge our thoughts, we can not only change our personal realities, but also transform the way we interact with the world, creating a future where we are not just passive observers of our thoughts, but active creators of our happiness. In our journey through the hidden corridors of the mind, we've seen how our unchecked thoughts can shape our reality and dictate our happiness or suffering. This idea is not just theoretical, it's a reality we live every day. Let me share one last story that reinforces this crucial point. A woman in her late 30s found herself constantly worried about what others thought of her. She would replay conversations in her head, agonizing over every word she said, wondering if she had offended someone or made a fool of herself. This constant self-scrutiny drained her energy and made her increasingly anxious. One day, she decided to keep a journal of her thoughts. As she documented her worries, she began to see a pattern. These thoughts were almost always baseless, driven by her insecurities rather than any real feedback from others. Realizing this was a turning point, she started challenging these thoughts, asking herself if there was any evidence to support them. Over time, she noticed a significant reduction in her anxiety. Her reality changed because she changed her thoughts. This story, like the others we've explored, underscores the power of our thoughts. It shows that by becoming aware of and challenging our thoughts, we can shift our perspective and ultimately our reality. As the editor of Hardly, by mastering our thoughts, we hold the key to shaping not just our own lives, but the world around us, paving the way for a future where we choose happiness over needless suffering.